Hello and welcome to Moneycontrol. Halfway through the pivotal UN climate change conference, better known as COP28, some clarity has emerged on crucial matters. The stock-taking of countries has made it clear that global climate targets to limit the rise of global average temperatures to well under 2 degrees Celsius and ideally to 1.5 degrees Celsius from pre-industrial times will need governments to significantly ramp up their respective commitments. Secondly, there is a strong consensus emerging on an orderly and just phase out of fossil fuels. Even as this COP is receiving a lot of flack for having the highest number of all lobbyists at the conference, there are other energy guzzling industries which are also taking part in COP28. For instance, the International Aluminium Institute has announced a new initiative that commits to transparently and publicly track ambitions and progress in greenhouse gas reduction of all its member companies. And how will they do it? Well, to answer that and talk about the aluminium industry, we have with us from COP in Dubai, Mr. Satish Pai, the Managing Director of Hindalco Industries, who is also the Chair of International Aluminium Institute. Welcome to Moneycontrol, Mr. Pai.
Yeah, hello, hi.
Glad you're joining us. You have made a big announcement from the industry. First things first, aluminium industry is committing to back new greenhouse gas initiative. How will this work?
So fundamentally, if you look at the whole green agenda going forward and the strategy to electrify the world, aluminium plays a big part of that role there. So it's very important that we have access to aluminium to help us electrify. Now, the reason why the aluminium industry has come out so strongly and launched this initiative in COP28 is that aluminium is very electricity intensive to make. So hence, we want to make sure that the aluminium that we produce is low carbon aluminium. And that is why we have launched this initiative. And then so that it's very clean and transparent, the IAI, which is the International Aluminium Institute that I chair, has come out with a methodology and a way to track and report what each member company commits to and what they actually do. So that's really what we are announced in COP28.
Mr. Pai, I believe that the group wants to state a long-term greenhouse gas reduction target by 31st December 2024. I mean, preferably they are looking at a net zero target by 2050. Now, help me understand, have you done any assessment on what kind of investments would this require?
So the investment profile is different depending on the region you are in. I mean, if you're in Europe and you have access to hydropower, then you have less of an investment to do. But I think what we should focus on is what they call the global south, which is really, if you take the developing countries, India, Middle East, and you take China as well, large parts of our electricity still come from coal or natural gas or oil. And I think that the investment is actually needed in these countries. And I think that the investment needed is actually quite significant. If you look at in India, where we use majority of our power from coal, to try to decarbonize our electricity profile and the grid, this is where majority of the investment will have to go into.
I mean, given the dependence on fossil fuel, obviously this is something that can't happen overnight, and we'll see how this works out. But the carbon border adjustment mechanism, CBAM, which is, which will enforce foreign importers to cover the cost of their carbon emissions, kicked in on October 1st. And this is something that the industry has been carefully watching. How prepared are Indian metal manufacturers for it?
So look, I think the fact that there will be some sort of a carbon tax in most countries is a given in the long term. So Europe normally is ahead of the pack and have announced it, but let's also see that the Indian government is in active discussions with the industry and other stakeholders to put some sort of a carbon trading mechanism in India as well. So I think, most companies are quite well aware that there'll be some sort of a carbon tax coming in most countries. And I think that most of the companies that are progressive and are looking to be world players are preparing for this.
Of course, long way to go on that as well. But, if you look at the aluminium industry, there's some serious challenges that it faces in turning green. I mean, by its nature, you need uninterrupted round-the-clock power, RTC power as we refer to it. And while India has developed a significant amount of renewable energy capacity, RTC is still at an early stage. What is Hindalco doing in this respect? If you can share some perspective on that.
Yeah, I think that, absolutely correct that, just renewables on its own is not going to solve industry's problem for baseload power, and hence the concept of round-the-clock green power. I think, it's interesting that Hindalco's RTC power contract that we did with Greenco using pumped hydro actually got selected in COP28 as one of the projects that got award, and we actually presented it here. So the concept is that we'll be using a combination of solar, wind, and pumped hydro to give us an 85% load factor. And we are actually going to start using this in our Aditya smelter from sort of third quarter next year. Now, we think that, if we can make this work, then this gives us a line of sight to decarbonize the aluminium smelting chain, which is the most difficult one. So we are actually quite eager to get this contract started, and are quite hopeful that this is going to work. I mean, just to be clear, Hindalco has taken a target that 30% of its aluminium production will be low carbon by 2030. And this pumped hydro contract is actually one of the kingpins of our strategy to make that happen.
That's interesting, and the 2030 target is not that far away. Mr. Pai, since I have you, there's no way I can let you go without asking a few questions about Hindalco. Many of our viewers and readers are investors of Hindalco. Just for our understanding, after the second quarter, in one of the comments you had said that you expect demand to remain strong for aluminium and copper in the Indian market, given that there is expectation that project execution will pick up significantly ahead of the union election. We stand in December already. What's your outlook on demand and price for the third and the fourth quarter?
So I don't really change anything from what I said after our earnings call. The Indian market, the demand is very good. It's growing at more than 10% year on year, and I think that's going to continue based on auto, electrification projects, building and construction. All these sectors are doing quite well. So the Indian demand is quite strong. But if you actually look at the LME, and you remember my comments, I said it will be between 2100 and 2300. It's actually around 2175 today. And the weakness in that LME is still because of global macroeconomic triggers that they're looking at. The Chinese economy is still a worry to many people. People are worried whether the rest of especially Europe, how the economy is going to perform. So on the demand side, no problem. On the outlook for LME, I still stay with my guidance that it's going to be between 2100 and 2300, and largely because of macroeconomic triggers.
Mr. Pai, Hindalco has an ambitious plan of investing $4.4 billion on capex over the next 5 years in India and US. Now, this is you had revisited the capex plan from an earlier announcement of $8 billion. As things stand right now, do you foresee any challenges going ahead that may force you to revisit this number again? And how is the capex going so far?
I think that, we had revisited the plan because we said that we'll keep the capexes in line with our cash flows. So when the LME came down, when last year there was a little bit of softness in demand internationally, which impacted Novelis, we had said that we will, slow the capex a little bit to keep it in line with our cash flows. What I'm happy to say is that, we see no further need to change any of our capex plans. We are going ahead with all the big projects that we announced. Just to recap, the big $2.7 billion Bay Minette project of Novelis is progressing very well. Our Aditya expansion of 3,500 crores in India is progressing very well. And we also announced a big 1 million greenfield alumina refinery in Odisha. So I think that, the strength of Hindalco's balance sheet allows us to stick with our capex plans even during these slightly softer times.
You spoke about Novelis briefly there. I mean, the India demand you have said that will remain strong. Give us some perspective on what you are expecting from Novelis and the demand globally.
So as we said at the end of Q2, the worst is over from a can market destocking for Novelis. So we are now seeing can volumes pick up. Auto demand has always been very strong. Aerospace is very strong. So I think for Novelis now, the worst is over, and we are going to see every quarter by quarter progressively better results coming out of Novelis.
That's great news, and I'm sure your investors will be very happy to hear that. Mr. Pai, another concern that the industry in general is facing is on the energy side. I mean, energy security and the prices as well. Help me understand, what is Hindalco's strategy? Are you looking at any M&A opportunities to secure energy for your company?
Not really. You see, internationally, it's basically we buy it from the grid. So the only place we were worried about for Novelis is Europe. But I think this year the prices are still at reasonable levels. So I don't think we have much concern there. I think on the India side, power demand in India is extremely strong. It is fair to say that the auction prices of coal have been trending a little bit higher. But I also think that the production profile from Coal India and all has been extremely robust. So I think I'm quite confident that energy availability and coal availability to do power this winter will not be a concern in India. So far, so good.
Mr. Pai, China factor, how is that playing out? I mean, there are concerns that your industry has raised over dumping in the past, and there is also a potential opportunity for India from the China One strategy that countries are looking at. How do you see this playing out for the aluminium industry?
I think you actually said it very well. So on one hand, there's a great opportunity with the China Plus One. So a lot of people coming into India, setting up capacity, and we are looking to provide aluminium and copper for that opportunity. But, I'm sitting here in Dubai as well. But as the Chinese economy has weakened, the Chinese aluminium industry is looking for new markets for their aluminium. So India is a big target. Middle East Africa is a big target. So if you look at the level of imports coming into India from China, especially foil, has sharply risen. And it's coming in at what I call lower prices than the cost of production in China. So that is a concern. And through the appropriate industry bodies, we have filed petitions for anti-dumping again.
Mr. Pai, you are in a very peculiar position as a metal manufacturer. I mean, the industry is vulnerable to the commodity cycles on one hand, and on the other hand, you really have to move forward with decarbonization. Now, if you look at most of the metal companies, there is significant debt on the books, and you are also dealing with constant push and pull on the margins. Given this background, how are metal companies and also specifically Hindalco looking to finance the decarbonization projects that you are looking at?
So see, the critical thing that has played out is that our strategy in Hindalco, which we started to execute about 6-7 years ago, that we would deleverage the company, pay off our debts, get the debt off and make the balance sheet clean, actually is helping us during these times. Because now interest rates have gone up. If you need to borrow money, as some of our other companies in the metal space do, you're going to pay very high interest rates and high finance costs. But I think the advantage of Hindalco is our net debt to EBITDA in India is close to zero. And we are generating pretty robust cash flows. Novelis is a converter business, also robust cash flows. So we have the ability to invest in a down cycle, which is going on right now. And I think that is in my opinion, the differentiation of Hindalco versus other metal companies.
I think that will hold you in strong stead. I mean, investing in down circle. Before we wrap up, Mr. Pai, you are at COP. You've been participating in the conference. Help me understand. We are almost midway, right? And at this stage, what is the best outcome that you are hopeful of from COP28 before it wraps up later this month?
So, I was hearing your opening comments on COP as well. And for me, as a This has been my first COP that I've come to. So let me tell you, the thing that, in my opinion, differentiates this COP 28 from the others is that you have most of the hard to abate sectors like oil and gas, steel, cement, aluminium, all of them here represented by their CEOs, not lobbyists. Let me be clear. There's no lobbyists from Hindalco here. I am here. And I think that and if you want to make real action happen on the climate, then it's industries and corporates like us who have to take the steps. The other bodies, the NGOs, the governments, they can make the declaration, but the action starts from companies like us. And I'm very hopeful because every industry that I have seen here has come in with firm commitments, with firm projects that they are working on. And I think, as you said, this is a transition. So it will take maybe some more time, but the commitment is there from all the industries. And that's why I feel that this COP is, if I can say anything, it's a practical COP, not just a COP of declarations.
It's a practical COP. That's a good note to end this interaction on. Mr. Pai, thank you so much for joining us on Moneycontrol. We really appreciate your time and perspective. Best of luck for COP 28 and see you in India when you're back.
Thank you.